Hello and welcome to the pod. I'm Nathan Fink.
I'm Jasmine Torres-Allen, and this is New Hampshire Family Now,
a show about building family in the Granite State. Today in the podcast, we're joined by Mandy Carter, Louis Esposito, Jacqueline Roland, and Elaine Mello for a conversation about supporting our youth in this digital era. Today's show was brought to you by Service Credit Union. You go beyond for your family. That's why Service Credit Union goes beyond for you. Get more for your money, reach milestones sooner, and plan for the future you've earned. Service Credit Union will support you every step of the way to go further than you ever imagined. If you're driven to go beyond, you belong with Service Credit Union. Visit servicecu.org to start your journey today. This podcast was also brought to you by Family Support New Hampshire. Family Support New Hampshire is NH's coalition of family resource centers and family strengthening programs that exist to ensure Granite State families have access to resources so both caregivers and children can succeed, because supported families are strong families. To find a family resource center near you, visit www.fsnh.org. Hello and welcome to the podcast. I'm thrilled to be joined by guest co-host Mandy Carter, Kinship Navigator, Community Resource Specialist at the River Center, mother of two, and facilitator of See the Able, Not the Label support group for parents and children with special needs. Mandy, welcome to the show.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good, and thank you so much for coming on as a guest co-host. I know you're getting your family moving. I always ask this parent to parent because it's the end of summer, and I can't help thinking about families transitioning back to school. How's it going with you?
So it's a little different this year. My son is starting a new school this year, so he's navigating new social groups, new friends, new expectations. So everything's new. And for a kid with autism and anxiety, he's got a little bit of anxiety.
Right.
But for my 12-year-old little girl, she is amazing. She's like reconnecting with old friends, making new ones, joining sports. She loves it. She loves the schedule. Both of them love the schedule.
So this is big because, obviously, I have a 6 and 8-year-old, and I like to talk about this because getting back to school for me is a transition. So I guess I should start with, how are you doing?
I think with my son, it's new social groups, it's new expectations,
Right.
It's a whole lot of unknowns because this is a new therapeutic special education school. And so there's a lot that we're learning. Like this Friday, they're going on a field trip to Monadnock Paddle to go kayaking tomorrow.
I mean, it sounds awesome, but do you start to do backflips based on, you relive this with your kids, I think, when they go back.
Yeah, I loved school. I wouldn't say a straight A student, but mostly A's. And I loved the structure of school. I loved going to see my friends, and it just seems like that's what's going on.
Yeah, that's great. Now, is there anything that you're doing that's helping it go well that might have been different in the past? How do you prepare them / prepare yourself?
We have a nighttime routine, as I think most families should. Doesn't always happen.
Note to self, have a nighttime routine.
Doesn't always happen. Yeah. But we eat dinner, and then they go take their showers, and then I say, okay, bring them to approve, and they bring me their clothes so I can approve.
Oh my
their
gosh.
Clothes, because otherwise they're like wearing stripes and dots, and I'm like, no, kid, you need to have something different.
I love that. I think that's interesting because that's like giving them both choice, but then also, a lot of caretaking and parenting really is about our comfortability level with what's going on with them. Do you know what I mean? So that's a really interesting thing to... Now, have you been doing that for a while?
We tried to do it last year, but the end of last year was real hectic. So we just started back up in the beginning of the school year, and we're a house full of ADHD people. So we'll see how long this lasts.
Oh my gosh. If my wife is listening, know that you're seen, you're felt. So now, with children obviously developing, we were talking a lot about us kind of developing as parents alongside them. But as they go through these different age groups, like I said with my kids, they present different developmental milestones. They're going through something new and different. Are you seeing anything new and different with your children at this age and stage in their development regarding school?
So with my 12-year-old, she's a little bit more neurotypical than my 16-year-old. I'm seeing her noticing the world more. I'm seeing her notice the good things. I'm seeing her notice the bad things. The other day, I saw her reading something on CNN, and I was like, whoa. We're not doing that. We're not doing that. You need to put that away. And she's like, but you blocked my YouTube. Find something else.
That's interesting.
So she's very aware of her surroundings. As far as my son, so chronologically, he's 16, but developmentally, he's only about 10. So I think that I'm seeing some appropriate 10-year-old milestones. And, we're working more towards getting more age-appropriate milestones met. But I have to meet him where he's at. So I just do whatever we can day by day.
I mean, I imagine the opportunity and successes there are large, but I would also imagine there's levels of concern that kind of layer in with both kids. I mean, just yesterday, my son, and we practiced this, never dive into a river. Never dive into a river because you don't know what's in there. Mm-hmm. Yesterday, he had to learn the hard way.
Oh, no.
Right. So these are different layers. That wasn't a concern 4 years ago. It wasn't a concern 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. It's a concern now, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering with you and your children, what is your greatest area of concern now?
Cyberbullying. New Hampshire has the highest rate in the country, and it's terrifying.
Louis Esposito. I'm the executive director at ABLE New Hampshire.
When we talk about bullying, what are we talking about?
Bullying, I grew up in the 80s too. And I think when I'm reflecting on my childhood, I think of the Christmas Story, right, with Scott Fargus. And, he's walking home, he's getting beat up, and it's the physical altercations. But that's not bullying. It is a form of bullying. And bullying is a repeated and intentional systematic harm on somebody. It could come physical, verbal, emotional, digital, and anything in between. So I think now we see a lot in schools that, especially with the digital, and it doesn't go away. It's always on you. So kids don't have that break to turn it off, and they're afraid to turn it off.
Now, I'm glad you mentioned Christmas Story. That's a really good way to think about it because there was 2 places where it happened, on the way to school, on the way home from school. But when you got there, you had safe zones. What you're saying now is the dynamics in bullying have changed completely.
Yes.
So tell me then the difference, because when I look at Scott Farkas, I see a kid who is mean. But there seems to be a difference between bullying and meanness.
I think meanness comes off as, and this is something that we're trying to navigate too with our family. Meanness is almost like a once off, like you're angry, you're upset, and you just are mean to somebody. But bullying really ties that power imbalance that 2 people might have, or one person has over the other. And it doesn't relent, it doesn't stop.
So talk to me then what this form of bullying looks like in a school setting.
I was an emotional disabilities teacher for the past 5 years. And previous to that, I was a teacher of students with intellectual disabilities. And a lot of my students experienced bullying in different ways. No 2 ways were exactly the same. I had students that were in the hallway and they, had racist and ableist things thrown at them while they're just walking down the hallway. I had students that were engaging in conversations with students from other parts of the state who were telling them they should go kill themselves. I was able to do, because of my role, was I had relationships with the students. So they felt comfortable disclosing this or showing it to me, and they trusted me that I could help and solve. And I worry about students that don't have that go-to person that they can trust, or the school's too big. The guidance counselor has 300 students on their case, so they might not have a close relationship, or they might distance themselves from teachers or preferred teachers. And yeah, it is worrisome that students could be out there without having someone to kind of confide in.
What I'm hearing is the bullying that you and I think of is geographic. Now it's relational. Mm-hmm. What is your approach as a father to teaching your children the skills to cope with things that they might see?
I can't say that I'm the one developing it myself. My wife and I are a strong partnership, and we discuss these things very late into the night sometimes. What's the difference between meanness and bullying?
Yeah. Now, what are you seeing that raises that to the top for you?
Well, my son, without going into specifics, my son was cyberbullied this summer, and it has been a very hard time for our family, trying to figure out what happened, navigate where do we go from here in a world where, just 15 years ago, we wouldn't even have had to worry about this. Maybe 20 years ago. The world is moving faster and faster and faster.
So when we talk about this as your greatest fear, what is the fear?
Well, my son has autism, and he is an easier target. More kids with disabilities are bullied than kids without disabilities.
Yeah.
When you hand a kid a phone, you're basically giving them all of the knowledge of the world. You hand them a tablet, you hand them a phone, you hand them any internet connected device. They have the whole world at their fingertips, basically. Like my daughter, there's areas that they don't need. And that includes, a lot of the things that happen as a result of cyberbullying, which is, there's some child pornography, there's some just really being mean, there's racism, sexism, gender bias. And it's just, I am concerned with my son because he has autism and he's more likely to be bullied, and he has less tools to help him once he does realize that this is what's happening.
My son comes home and says a friend was being mean to him. Is that considered bullying? It's really hard to draw the line, and it's hard to get a fair understanding of what's going on. For him, we're trying to figure out that delicate balance. We want to be able to support you, but we also want to see you grow and get strong. But we also don't want him to lose that spunk, that sense of childhood that, we see every day. We hate it when he comes home and he's feeling upset that he had interactions with his friends that, he deemed as bullying, and we talk about it. That's the best thing you can do, is just talk. Just like how we have those safe zones at school, we need those safe zones at home too.
We're going to take a short break, but when we come back, we'll have more from our conversation about supporting our youth. Don't go anywhere. Today's show was brought to you by Bank of New Hampshire. For 193 years, Bank of New Hampshire has put customers and communities first. With the expertise to help you realize your goals, their technology makes banking easier, and the friendly faces will make you want to visit in person. Want a bank that has your back? Bank of New Hampshire are your people. For more information, visit bnh.bank or call 1-800-832-0912. Member FDIC. Today's podcast was brought to you by Dartmouth Health Children's. As the only comprehensive pediatric healthcare system in the region, Dartmouth Health Children's promotes health, advances knowledge, and delivers the best patient and family-centered care for infants, children, and adolescents. Shared knowledge from expert providers across the system increases their ability to care for patients and families close to home. From annual checkups to specialized treatments, Dartmouth Health Children's is dedicated to ensuring all children live their happiest, healthiest lives. For more information, visit childrensdartmouthhealth.org. That's childrens.dartmouth-health.org. Today's show was also brought to you by NFI North. For more than 40 years, NFI North has served as an indispensable nonprofit resource for delivering mental and behavioral health care services to children, adults, seniors, and families across Maine and New Hampshire. To learn more, visit nfinorth.com. And now back to our show. And, being confronted with more information is tricky because we don't always have those tools, like you're saying, to deal with it in a healthy manner. Mm-hmm. So you must be, because you've been confronted with it, you must be having conversations about what's happening. What conversations are you having about being the target of this bullying?
So we're just explaining him, there are good people and there are bad people. Sometimes good people make bad decisions. Sometimes bad people make good decisions. All you can really control is yourself and how you react to it, and keeping aware of your own risk and surroundings. Those with autism tend to not really recognize the risky situations that they're being put in. And I think that is 100% what happened in this case. He didn't realize the risky situation he was in, and none of this was him. Like, he didn't even know about most of this.
Yeah, that's interesting because we want to protect our children from bad things, right? But as adults, we know bad things happen. And so then we give them a toolkit to say, when bad things happen, here is how you can say navigate it. And, this kind of combines with this, for me, this idea, especially in raising children, that understanding we are a product of our environments. And I start to get that saying in my head, hurt people hurt people. So we also then have to talk with our kids about not perpetuating these behaviors because we model behaviors. Do you have conversations about that? And if so, what do those conversations look like?
So my family isn't perfect. We're loud, we're messy, we're chaotic, but we love fiercely, we care deeply, and we believe in the underdog. So I assign a high value to talk therapy. I believe that going to see a therapist should be just as easy as going to see a PCP.
Yeah.
You've got a ache in your back. All right, well, let's talk about the ache in your brain too. There's things that can benefit from talk therapy. Learning begins at home, but the school is just as pivotal in the formation of morals, ideals, perceptions. So one of the districts in this area is using a curriculum called Signs of Suicide. And I've heard about it. I've looked it over a little bit briefly. Seems like a really solid program. I'm not one to really like curriculums because I think that everyone should have their own version of learning. But I think in this case, it's a great idea to let peers know about suicidal ideation, self-harm, all of that.
Elaine Mello, Director of Suicide Prevention Services, NAMI, New Hampshire. And I think about how complex the world is these days compared to when you and I were young, because we have factors like AI, social media, all kinds of information, some of which is accurate, some of which is not. And you have to wonder how a youth sort of sorts through all of that and determines what's real and who am I in relation to the world. So I think what's really important is the things that we've always been able to count on is having a solid environment that you can count on, having some consistency, having some grounding in values and beliefs that carry you, having the positive influences, or certainly having positive role models, influences that inspire you, lessons that you can learn from that help you through challenges in life. That's true for us, any of us at all ages, right? So those are the positive kinds of things. I think when you have those, it makes it easier to sort out some of the more complex or challenging and potentially negative influences that come our way. And there's plenty of them out there, more so on social media than there ever has been. But there's also some very real challenges and threats to our future, climate change, things like that, politics, wars. So that's the sort of thing that, again, we all go back to our grounding. What have I got? What can I count on? What can I do to make the world a better place? And I think when young people have that sense, that prepares them much better in the face of things that might cause risk to increase for a youth. The good news is with young people is if they have it at home, and in their family and in their immediate surroundings, that's wonderful. Schools can help build that strength. Families can help build that strength. But when they don't, they can still get that from others.
How can we approach this conversation? How should we be talking to our youths, our children, about things like self-harm or suicidal ideation?
Yeah, so obviously the relationship and the trust is really important, right? So having that, we could say to somebody, geez, I noticed you seem like you're a little bit off this week. I noticed that you, whatever the behavior is, that you seem to be withdrawn, you're not smiling like you usually do. So you don't have to jump right into, hey, are you thinking of dying? Are you thinking of killing yourself? You could just ease into it and just make an observation. Flip side is we hear so many stories about strangers who are just looking for somebody to notice that they're in trouble, right? Somebody on a bridge who's thinking about jumping and just saying, boy, if somebody just notices that I'm in distress, it doesn't have to be somebody I know. It doesn't have to be a police officer. It doesn't have to be a mental health therapist. Just please, somebody take notice. And how many times have you smiled at somebody in the supermarket who was looking a little bit distressed? And then you meet them in the next aisle and they thank you, right? So I would just say that human connection by nature opens a door. If we have an opportunity to reach into somebody that we think is in distress, in trouble, take that opportunity.
Are there resources that are available to us to help either with suicidal ideation in ourselves or with those around us that are accessible?
So there's plenty of training. There's plenty of information. You certainly can go to the NAMI New Hampshire website. There's plenty of information, reliable information on national websites, programs that are available. There's many programs in New Hampshire. And the good news is in New Hampshire, we require all schools to get 2 hours of training. That means not just school personnel, custodians, bus drivers, people work in the cafeteria, and the students. So more and more people are becoming familiar with looking out for people at risk for suicide, just like you would watching out for somebody who might be having a heart attack or being aware of germs and things like that, right? Like the wash your hands sign on the, over the sink. Same kind of signs are up in bathrooms that say, here's the 988 number, and here's, you can call this 24/7. I think it's becoming part of our culture now.
Now, I guess as a caregiver and a parent, I keep thinking about those environments we create, because you do have your school environment, but community starts at home. And I wanted to know from you, do you have any advice for parents on how to build a home environment that's conducive to an anti-bullying stance for children?
Little secret about me, I'm a mean mom. I put, as soon as I got my kids a tablet or a phone, and they have a phone because I need to be able to know they're all in sports, they're all over the place. I put family tracking apps on our family's phones. I put an app called Google Family Link, and I can unlock and lock their phone at will. I can give them set boundaries. I can make it so I have to approve every single app that they download on their phone. I can make it all age appropriate. And I can even say, hey, you're only getting an hour and a half of YouTube. So these are things that I think more parents need to be more involved with the technology side of their kids' lives.
Yeah, I don't think that makes you mean. In fact, I was accused of being mean yesterday because I wouldn't pull my youngest son from school to go fishing. That was mean dad material. But I also, I empathize with exactly what you're going through. We have to do the same thing because you cannot be beside them in every circumstance. Mm-hmm. And, not even your home environment. You can't be beside them at home. You can't be beside them in the community the majority of their time. So when you look around community, because this is about building a healthy, ecosystem for kids and families, when you look around the community, what do you want to see in terms of supportive spaces for your children?
I think that the first thing they need is positive peer relationships. We need, and to do that, we need the spaces for it to happen and the positive peers, right? So how do we get that? I think if we empower teens to get involved in their community, the positivity will follow and the spaces will sort them out later. But second, a peer mentoring program. Peers, it's shown, like, if you're nudging another kid and you're just being a jerk and your homeroom teacher says, knock it off, leave little Johnny alone. All right, you'll leave him alone for a little bit. But, if Sally next to you says, dude, knock it off, you might listen to Sally a little bit better than you're going to listen to the teacher. Yeah. So I think these positive peer mentorships are something that really will make a difference.
Now, are there any examples of those that you can think of?
Yeah, I think Avenue A is a phenomenal example of a simple idea that resulted in a big impact.
Jacqueline Roland, Director of Teen Programs at the Grapevine Family and Community Resource Center. We're a teen center. We're based in Antrim, and we serve teens across the Monadnock region from the Conval School District and surrounding towns with after-school and evening enrichment programs that focus on creative expression, social development, and career and life skills.
So what is it that makes Avenue A such a healthy space for area youths?
It starts with youth feeling like they are reflected in the space. Like it's a healthy space for them because it is a space for them. And so we really listen. And I think teens feel that in our space. It's reflected in the artwork on the walls, the messages in the room, even just the little tchotchkes on our table. We have a snack counter with an oddities collection, is what we call it. And teens can come and bring little items that are special to them and leave it there. So there's just all these things in the space that reflect how we are trying to hear youth and create something that's from their ideas and their dreams and what they want for themselves. So I think that's what makes it feel safe to them. They really feel like they're heard in this space.
Well, then how do you go about building something that's that welcoming from a cultural perspective?
When young people feel heard, they're really bought in to what we do. And that means they want to be here. They're invested in what we're doing. And that creates a culture where they honor this space and they really hold what it is. So it's not about us telling them this is what we are here. Like they hold that inside themselves. And that is so much more powerful than a bunch of adults trying to impress upon them what we want them to be. So I think that's how we built that, is listening to their voices. But at Avenue A, that looks like a million little things. For example, our cooking group, the teens meet every week and they pick the meals that they want to make. They vote and decide on the recipes. Every season we pass surveys around at our programs. Sometimes we'll call it like fall vibe check. What do you guys want to do for programs? And everyone can write down their ideas or write their name next to ideas that they like or dislike. In our writing club, every teenager takes turns bringing a prompt each week. So they're writing about topics that they've picked. In our Pizza Talk peer support group, the teens pick a topic that they want to discuss every week. So just little things like that, but they all add up.
But teens don't come without outside influences. Everything that happens to them outside those walls, they bring with them. So in creating that welcoming space, do you ever have to talk about what it means to be unwelcoming?
So I find that we are really laser focused on the environment that we do want. So most of our conversations with teens are focused on the positive things that we're trying to build. So when you come in our space, our basic expectations at every program are be kind, respectful, and safe. And that's posted on our wall. When we're talking to teens, in preparation for this conversation, I was kind of racking my brain, like, have we ever really had a specific conversation around bullying? And I think that most of our conversations with teens are so focused on kindness and what we are at Avenue A that we really try to take it more from that positive perspective. Not that we're not acknowledging what's happening for young people or what they're feeling, but if we talk more about what we want to see versus what we don't want to see, I think we get more.
If I'm hearing you correctly, it's not about stopping something, it's about starting something.
Yes, that was perfectly said.
What do you think our role as adults is in building the culture that you're talking about?
I think it's celebrating differences in a really authentic way. We do that a lot at Avenue A. I think it's powerful for youth to see uniqueness and differences being celebrated and discussed, whether that's our family stories, whether that's our interests, our hobbies, our unique gifts. We just love having conversations around those things at Avenue A. And I think it has created a culture where young people are looking for those differences as an opportunity to celebrate and to stand out in their own way. So it's a good thing, not a bad thing. And this is a silly example of this, but we recently took our lawn chair drill team on a nursing home tour. The teens put together synchronized movements with lawn chairs set to music, and then we go to local nursing homes and perform in their parking lots. And after one of the performances, there was this Q&A time, and somebody asked, like, why lawn chairs? Why are you guys doing this with lawn chairs? And one of the teens said, why not? Like, Avenue A is kind of a quirky place and lawn chairs are really fun. And so, like, why not lawn chairs? Being curious and asking questions is a great thing we can do as adults to support young people. Asking, well, why do you feel that way? Why do you feel that makes you different? Or why do you feel that's a positive or negative thing about you? And just being really curious to dig into where their ideas come from.
They've got some pretty wild and crazy programs. I think you participated in the blindfold boat race.
I did.
You were very
life.
stunning as Ken. I loved your hair.
If you noticed, that was a symptom of not having had hair for at least 25 years. I had no idea what to do with it.
And I think that there should be an Avenue A in every school district. It really is a good place for these kids to go have the good peer relationships in a safe and warming and comfortable space.
Yeah. Now, aspire with me a little bit, because this can be scary, right? The idea of bullying or cyberbullying can be very scary, especially in circumstances regarding your children or any children. But they do leave your presence constantly. So when you think about them going into the community, to school and sports or clubs, what environment do you hope they find themselves in?
I hope my kids enter environments that are inclusive and are accepting. Accepted is the main word, right? We want them to feel comfortable being who they are. And it is nerve-wracking. I'm getting all worked up thinking about it right now because it's scary.
So I was talking with my husband a little bit about this last night, and he's like, so what do you think? And I was like, well, it sounds kind of hokey, but my hope is that they're always laughing wherever they are, because that means they're happy. And he's like, well, how about included, accepted, challenged, understood? And I was like, yeah, those things too. But if they're those things, then they're laughing. So it's just, I hope that they are in a place where they are understood and accepted.
And a very special thank you to River Center Resource Navigator and Facilitator Mandy Carter, Executive Director of ABLE New Hampshire, Louis Esposito, Director of Youth Programming at the Grapevine, Jacqueline Roland, and Director of Suicide Prevention Services at NAMI New Hampshire, Elaine Mello. And a quick reminder that NAMI Walks New Hampshire, the state's largest mental health awareness and suicide prevention event, will be held on Sunday, October 6th at the soccer fields on South Fruit Street in Concord, with registration opening at 9 a.m. and the walk beginning at 10:30 a.m. Free registration is open at www.namiwalksnh.org. And many thanks to the Office of Social and Emotional Wellness, or OSEW, at the NH Department of Education for sponsoring this podcast. OSEW's mission is to advance youth social emotional wellness by collaborating with federal, state, community, and family partners to implement evidence-based, data-driven, preventative, and responsive approaches to lifelong social emotional skills for New Hampshire's students. To learn more about the Department of Education, visit www.education.nh.gov. Merrimack County Savings Bank, where Merrimack style is treating everyone with care, respect, and compassion, proudly supports the mission and efforts of New Hampshire Children's Trust. Founded in 1867, the Merrimack has served people, businesses, nonprofits, and municipalities in central and southern New Hampshire for over 157 years. Visit local offices in Bow, Concord, Contoocook, Hooksett, Nashua, and Wyndham, or go to themerrimack.com. New Hampshire Family Now is listed on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and more. Listen wherever you get your podcasts, or ask your smart speaker to play New Hampshire Family Now.